So this is from Adventurous Art 995, who says, how to split interest with your partner. She says, my boyfriend and I have a business idea and we've just started building the company. From the beginning, we agreed to keep things as clear and straightforward as possible without mixing our relationship into the business side of things. I know it can be risky to go into business with a partner, family, or friends, but that's not really the point here. The plan was for both of us to have equal ownership, 50-50 split. But now we've reached a point where we need to invest our own money into the business. He can put in 4,000 euros. I can put in 8,000 euros as our initial capital. Even though we had originally agreed on a 50-50 ownership, now it turns out I'm putting in twice as much. I'm starting to feel that an equal split doesn't really reflect the situation anymore. Don't laugh. This is very common.
I know, but here's the funny thing, right? Like literally the paragraph before. We're trying not to bring our relationships into it and family.
Of course.
And then immediately there's a problem.
Of course there is.
That is going to reflect.
For those of you who have gone into business with a partner, family member, significant other, how do you handle this? If you want to keep things fair and transparent, I feel like we should adjust the ownership to something like 60-40 at least. What worked for you?
What worked for me was not to do business with family anymore.
With friends. First of all, and this is beyond partnership.
Yeah.
I will not hire someone that I know as a family or friend, or someone that is from a family or member or a friend, because if and when I have to fire that person, I'm going to lose that relationship.
Yeah.
I'd rather keep the friendship.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would.
I'm with you, right? So I can tell you because I've had a business with family. My family had a business together, and you hear more cases of where these things go wrong than when they go right. Right. And I'm not saying they can't go right, because I know a husband and wife team that are doing brilliantly. They have a cabinetry store, multiple locations. They're in the process of franchising, and they just work really well together. Right. But they had been married for 5 years before they even started. Right. So all the capital that came in was not hers or his, it was theirs. Right. So they were in on everything together from day one. They literally started this cabinet business out of their garage. Right now they have like 3 or 4 showrooms and stuff.
So it can work.
It can work, right? Where this is getting murky already is the fact that you're in a relationship, so it's not ours.
Yeah.
It's yours and his. Right? So immediately the business is ours, but the capital is coming from, like, this is murky already.
Yeah.
This is stuff you should have talked about before you started the business. Going, hey, if we have to put money in, is the equity going to split? Because when you have to do it afterwards, it's an awkward conversation, right?
Yeah. So, yes. I'm going to give you one story that is, I might as well be 100 stories, right, over my career. So this is very recent too. So about 2 years ago, I had husband, wife, son, and daughter-in-law.
Okay.
Right.
So 4 people.
4 people. The husband owned an I'm not going to go into full detail, but let's say the husband owned a service business.
Okay.
And he wanted to bring the wife on as a partner in the service business, just because she was going to help with the books and stuff like that. And there are some tax advantages to doing that.
Yep.
Then the son was going to come on as well as a partner. And then they figured, okay, we'll bring in the daughter-in-law too, because they're married and, that will have some tax advantages too. Okay. So they do all that. And then they come to me and they said, hey, we want to put together the partnership agreement. Now, the father has owned the business for about 25 years. We do all the way. Now, I sit with these people and I say, look, I just want you to understand what happens when, and I give the same spiel to anybody that's starting a partnership. I want you to understand what happens when partnerships begin. You're family now, but when money's involved, blah, blah. No. Don't worry about us. We're so close. We're hugging each other. Nothing's ever going to go wrong. We're a family.
Less than 2 years?
18 months. About 18 months. I get a call. We have to come in and talk to you. Okay, what's the matter? the father and son aren't speaking to each other because they have different opinions on how to run the business. Now they're together because they gave the mother and the stepdaughter, the mother and daughter-in-law got, I want to say 10% each.
Mhm.
So the father and son split the rest. So they're like 40-40, 10 and 10. So the father and son own equal shares. So they have equal say. And they're at odds on how to run the business.
Mhm.
And now they're not speaking with each other.
Yep.
This happens all the time.
Yep.
It usually happens with best friends. Best friends get together and they want to start a business. And they think it's going to be the greatest, most glorious thing ever. We've been friends since we were 8 years old. We're in our 30s now. Nothing could ever change that relationship. And within a couple of years, they hate each other.
Yep.
And it's an unfortunate reality. Now, again, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's what you said earlier. You did not plan properly beforehand.
Mhm.
You need to have on the table all your cards need to be out. Every one of your expectations need to be out there so the other person knows what your expectations are,
Yep.
and all their expectations so you know what they are.
So I did this. I set up a business with a partner that's
Yeah.
still running. And when we sat down and talked about it, I flat out looked at him and said, I want you to be the 55% owner. And he went, why? I'm like, because one of us ultimately always has to make the final decision. So I trust you to do it because I know you would trust me. Because if I can't trust you to make the decisions, I probably shouldn't be doing this in the first place. Right? So if you are, and that's kind of my rule of thumb, is if you aren't willing to hand control fully over to your partner,
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't be getting into a partnership with them at all.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the level that it might take. And I'm willing to do it on paper as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I don't trust you to that level, I'm not getting into business with you at all. Like, period.
But let's digress.
Yes.
Let's go back to
this.
They're already in business.
Yes.
Okay. How do we save this business and this relationship? All right. So you and I might differ here. I don't know. We've never actually had this discussion, so you and I might differ.
We had a similar one, but yes.
Okay. Did we?
We
probably did. We've had a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
Heck knows. All right. So you're putting in 8, he's putting in 4.
Mhm.
Well, the simple solution is if you're really worried about the money, just put in 4. Right? Just put in 4, let him put in 4, and you split it evenly. If you need 12 in there in order to keep the business going and you're putting in 8, he's putting in 4, it doesn't have to be, you can still keep it 50-50, just make the second 4, so you put in 4, he puts in 4, that's your equity buy-in, and then the other 4 is a loan, and that gets paid back over time. That's another way to do it, to keep it even. Another way to do it is say, it's $4,000, or 4,000 euro. We're starting a business. If we're not going to make more than 4,000 euro, 4,000 euro is what we're worried about. What's the point, right? Years from now, when this business is doing very well, who cares about 4,000 euro? It really doesn't matter. Keep it 50-50,
Yep.
right? I don't like the idea of already getting, butting heads because you're putting in 8,000 euro and he's only putting in 4,000 euro. There's 100 different ways to skin that cat.
Yep.
And I would say, number one, you got to keep, if this is already affecting your relationship, just stop. You're done. It's not going to work. If this is affecting your relationship as boyfriend, girlfriend, it's already over.
Yep.
It's just a matter of time. You're talking about money. What happens when the real pressure comes?
What happens when you add a 0 to that?
Right. You add a 0 to it. Right. Exactly.
Right.
And what happens when the tax man comes a knocking, or you get sued and liability man comes a knocking? Who's paying it then?
Yep.
Is that relationship really going to survive that?
So my thing with this is, what do you value more, the relationship or the money?
Yeah.
Right. Because you can't value both equally in this instance. And she's flat out saying that she doesn't value it equally.
Right.
In the name of fairness.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if it was in the name of fairness, this question would have been asked completely differently.
Yeah.
Right. I would have done it differently. I would have just said, both of us, it's not going to be a capital contribution. We're both going to lend the money at a certain interest rate.
Yep.
And the company has to pay us back starting at X date.
Yep.
And let's say you do it at a 10% interest rate, just for argument's sake.
They want you a credit card?
Well, if you're lending,
It's a high risk lend. I
if
know.
you're
That's hard money, man.
correct,
That's a hard money loan
it's
right there.
and then so both of them become loans. That means you're both going to get your money out with interest, right? And you're going to get more because the interest.
You put in more, right?
Correct. So that's the conversation that should have taken place rather than this becoming a fight or an issue this early on.
Yeah.
There would have been so many other ways to solve this, but this is already now like a thorn in their side, and it's going to be a thorn in her side.
Yeah.
The fact that she's asking this, and if she hasn't had this conversation with him, and he's just thinking, well, we're in this together, right? Like he's probably seeing this as it's our opportunity, our money, because we're going to be together anyway. So what does it matter?
Yeah.
She's not.
She's not thinking that.
Not from what I can tell, right? So for anybody thinking about this in the future, so let's go away from this. This would have been solvable by just calling it a loan instead of capital contribution. There would have been no fight. This question never would have existed, right? But you and I have had this conversation about before you form the business, before you write that document, you have to have these conversations, right? Like, what if the company needs capital contributions? Does that change the ownership structure if people contribute different things, right? And that's a conversation you should have before you start, not once you're up and running and already have the business established, because now it's going to be a problem.
And a lot of people will say, and you'll see it on Reddit and stuff too. You'll see all the time, oh, you don't need to go to an attorney, just do it yourself, fill out these forms, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yes.
You can just go and fill out these forms. The reason you go to an attorney, and again, I'm not pitching myself here because they're in Europe. I don't care. I know. But the reason you go to an attorney is because you don't know how to ask those questions. You don't know what those questions are.
I had this conversation on Tuesday with a guy.
Did you really?
Him and two guys set up a business together. And last year was easy because they only ended up making like their total like net profit was like, I don't know, 30 grand or something between the three of them. So it was, an easy split. Right. So then I asked him, like, what if you add a zero to that? Now, what happens if you fall off a ladder and you're out for 8 months? Do you still have rights to 30% of what the business did?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones out there working for it.
And you're not.
And you're not.
Yep.
I'm like, do you have insurance for it? Right. What happens if you're permanently disabled and you can't rejoin the business? Are you still a 30% owner?
Yep.
Do you still have rights to 30% of all the net revenue?
Yeah.
Are they okay with that?
Are any of those guys married? Oh, if they are, what happens if they get divorced?
Correct.
Does the wife now come in and take 50% of his ownership?
Yeah. So do you now have 3 partners instead of 2 partners?
I could spend the next hour asking those questions. And I do all the time with my clients. I bring them in and they're like, okay, we want to form a partnership, a multi-member LLC or a corporation as a partnership, whatever. Great. No problem. No, that's wonderful. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
Now, here are all the things we have to consider. And sometimes they just sit there like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Of course you wouldn't have thought of that. Why would you have thought? It's like me taking my car to the mechanic and my mechanic showing me all the things he's looking at. I wouldn't know what to look at.
And it's the stuff that like people never think would happen, right? Like, so let's say you have a partner and the partner goes to a party, he gets drunk and gets wrongfully accused of assault, right?
Right.
The case drags on. His name is dragged through the mud.
Which means the business's name is dragged through the mud. Right.
So what happens in that situation? Right. Whether he gets like convicted or not, the damage is already done.
Yep.
Right. Like even if they find out, it wasn't him. It was a totally different guy altogether.
Yeah.
His name has still been dragged through the mud. Your business has been dragged through the mud. Like, do you have a temporary exit clause that if something like this happened, the person removes themselves completely from the business?
Yep.
His name gets taken, like, and it's all people are like, oh, stuff like that doesn't happen.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'll give you a very simple one that will happen to every business at some point. Right? You have 3 partners, 4 partners. Who cares? Right? And everything's going okay. The business is self-sufficient, right? And then there's a downturn in the economy.
Yep.
And the business is no longer self-sufficient.
Yep.
And one of the partners is like, I got to support my family. I got to get out. What do you do?
Mhm. It
Or
was what was it? There was some company that is really, really big now, like really big, where one of the partners was made CEO, and he's like, I got to lay you guys off. The other partners.
get
He's like,
out of here.
no. He's like, the company can't afford to keep you on.
Wow.
Based on the salaries that we've negotiated, I have to lay you off.
Oh,
Right.
man.
And he was the managing
Yeah.
partner.
And he's doing what's right for the company because you have a fiduciary responsibility to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So he laid them off, and
Wow.
I mean, it ended up
They
being
still own the company, but
correct.
they're not earning a
They're
paycheck.
not correct. They're no longer working in the company that they own. Right.
Oh, man.
Right. Because they weren't willing to take a pay cut.
Yeah.
Because they were like, well, then we can't support our family. And the guy was like, my
And
responsibility.
those are things
Yeah.
that you get again, that's part of my checklist that we asked beforehand. If there's a downturn in the economy and you can't pay yourselves,
Yep.
what do you do?
Yeah.
And I'll have 4 people in a room giving 5 different answers.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Some people say we just continue working. So I can't just continue working. Well, are you going to put money into the company? And then that starts a conversation, which sometimes turns into a little bit of an argument.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's just question 1.
Yeah. Right.
So a lot of people don't realize that when you're starting a partnership with somebody, you really are starting a marriage. And sometimes it's, multiple people involved in the marriage, and you all have different expectations, and you all have different desires, and you all have different goals. And if you don't iron that out beforehand, right? Now, listen, you're not going to get every possible situation. You're just not. But at least talking to an attorney or just going online and doing some research, you'll be able to get the most likely situations. And quite frankly, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you have to plan for those things beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to get in a situation like this here where one person can put up more money than the other,
Right.
and it's already tearing the relationship apart.
And it's funny because like as your business grows, it becomes bigger, especially if you're in a business that can grow rapidly, right? Like, let's say you start a fashion brand and it becomes really big, and you end up getting so big that you need a board of directors. Can the board fire you?
Yeah, right.
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 Technically, they can, right? Like it's your business, but you can be ousted.
I got a perfect example of that.
Steve Jobs?
No, friend of mine is starting a company.
Sam Altman?
Yeah, right. Buddy of mine. Yeah, we're smoking cigars to us later on today. You should join us. So he's starting a company with a bunch of other 3 other people. He knows nothing about the industry, my friend, but the other guys are all veterans in the industry. Okay. They're bringing their knowledge and everything in the industry. He's putting up $5 million cash. They're not putting up any money. He's putting up all the cash.
Yep.
Okay. I made it perfectly clear to him, if you're going to do this, we must put in there that nobody can kick you out of the company. You have to have final say when it comes to board members, officers, employees. No one can remove you from the company. End of story.
Right.
Because I've seen it happen before where this guy puts up the money, the other people get together, and then they force him out. And now they have all the money. This person no longer owns the business because the business isn't worth anything because there was no actual revenue.
Right.
But now they got the $5 million or whatever it is, and they forced this person out. And that person didn't think beforehand, or they didn't get an attorney to say, if you're going to be the only one putting up the money, you have to have a provision in there that you can't be forced out.
Right.
So, all right. Adventurous Art 995. I feel for you. I do. I get it. You're putting up more money than your partner. I think for when you're talking about €4,000 versus €8,000, you're all, if that's really bothering you, you're already looking at disaster, right? You either look beyond it, you restructure it so part of it's a loan or all of it's a loan. Otherwise, this is if this is a problem, you just wait till the real problems begin.
Yep.
So good luck to you. You're more than welcome to write us in the comments, and we'd love to follow up and get you some more information, get you some more advice. But right now, it's either accept it as it is, restructure it, or move on.
My thing is figure out which one you value more, the partnership or the money. Yeah, it's 4,000 is not worth.
It's not. It's
No,
just not.
It's not. Remember that if you have questions or comments, please drop them below and we will prioritize actually answering the questions on these videos.